Welcome to the France 24 interview. I'm Philip Crowther in New York. We're in the studios of Daniel Libeskind, renowned architect and also the master planner of the World Trade Center site that is in reconstruction right now here in Manhattan. Daniel Libeskind is with us right now. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Libeskind. Can I start first of all by asking you, we're so close to the World Trade Center site that's being basically rebuilt right now. What does it feel like for you? You are more involved than almost anybody to see these things happening, to see a tower go up, to see everything basically being renewed.
It's an amazing feeling. You know, our office is just south of the site. I see the site from my office. I live just north of the site, so I see it from my bedroom window as well. So every time I pass by, I'm inspired. How much has been done? This is a site of catastrophe, a kind of void in New York, and suddenly it's the healing, the rebuilding as a healing process, the fact that something coming back to life, an area with memory, with commemoration of that tragic day with those who fell, but also an area that is a 21st century New York, a new civic space, the memorial, the first tower, the fourth tower, there are 5 towers altogether, new streets coming back to link New York to its neighborhoods. So it's a tremendous feeling of moving forward in an inspired way.
Now, the tower that's being built right now used to be called the Freedom Tower, now One World Trade Center. It's going to be higher than the original World Trade Center towers. Is there anything provocative in that, in saying, I'm going to go in there and I would like this to be rebuilt again, basically?
No, it's not a provocation, but the tower that I proposed was not just a highest tower in New York, some sort of folly of height, but the height of aspiration, because the tower is 1776 feet high, which is really the date of the Declaration of Independence. After all, it's a document that spoke about freedom for all peoples in the world, human rights. So the site is definitely practical, but it's also symbolic. It's a site that speaks to New Yorkers, speaks to America, to the world, about the fact that the terrorists did not win.
A lot of people would say it's a spiritual place as well. I've spoken to a lot of family members of victims at the Pentagon in Shanksville in Pennsylvania as well. Those here as well say it's a sacred ground. Would you say this is a spiritual place?
It is, in many ways. It's strange because it's right in the middle of the city. It's, a secular city. It's part of the sort of marketplace of New York. But the fact that I started with a memorial, I didn't start with tall buildings. I started with the fact that you cannot really treat this place just as normal piece of real estate in New York. That this is where people perish. There should be a civic quality about this place, an intimacy in the site. There are the waterfalls, which I suggested, which will screen the sounds of busy streets of New York, give people a sense that this is a special place, a place of reflection, but also a space of enjoyment, because you can see a new vistas of New York. You can see a new neighborhood really emerging. It's not just some standalone buildings and a memorial, visitor center, and so on. It's a new neighborhood which is really facing the Hudson River, bringing together all these neighborhoods like Tribeca, Chinatown, Battery Park, Wall Street, together back again in the center of New York.
You call it a place of enjoyment. It is, though, the place where so many people lost their lives only 10 years ago. Did you ever consider not building anything here, saying something bad has happened here, something tragic, and we should leave it here? And not?
No, I never considered it. There are many people at that time who suggested build just low buildings or don't build anything. But no, I think this site has to have both. It has to be a site of memory. It has to remember what happened here, something that changed the world. But it also has to move New York forward. It cannot just be a site that transforms Lower Manhattan into a village. It is the center of New York. It is the historical site of New York. So I always believe that you have to be able to balance the need for memory, but also the need to rejuvenate New York, to regenerate New York, to really move New York forward.
Is it very American? You are now a US citizen as well. Is it very American to rebuild like this, to react like this to disaster, or is it very New York?
It's unprecedented. I think there is no precedent for this an attack in New York, which destroyed the 2 tallest towers, which devastated New York. There is no precedent. What do you do? So I think it is a site which is reflecting American optimism in many ways. Americans are, despite the problems that we see all around the world, Americans are not people who put their heads in the sand and forget about it and wait for 15 years, 20 years and think what to do. Americans act.
Are you truly optimistic then that what right now is almost it's still a tragic place. It always will be. Are you optimistic that it won't remain simply a sad place in the future, that it can become, as you said, an optimistic place? Really, do you think that will happen?
I absolutely think that the site has balanced the need for reflection and memory, but also the need to move forward, to have vital streets, to have fun, to have the commercial world take place, social, cultural world. I think that's what I wanted to do. Make sure that this site does not bring New York to a dark atmosphere, to a sadness that will never go away. I didn't want to unhinge New York from its central position of being a city of innovation, of creativity, of busy street, of fun. And of course, that's the balancing act, that's the master plan, and I think that's what you will see on the site.
Well, let's go back to that date, now almost 10 years ago. The 10th anniversary is coming up. You're going to be at the World Trade Center site itself for the anniversary. Where were you when it all happened 10 years ago?
You know, how strange. You know, I lived and worked in Berlin. I moved to Berlin for 13 years with my family to build a Jewish museum in Berlin. And 9/11 was the first day when I went to my office, my studio in Berlin, turned to all the colleagues around me and said, this is the first day I don't have to think about history, because the doors of the Jewish Museum will now open. And people will be able to encounter that history themselves. They will be able to reflect on what it means, German Jewish history, the catastrophes of the Holocaust, what it means. And the doors opened of the Jewish Museum on 9/11, first time to the public. They also closed. 2:30 Berlin time, which was 8:30 in New York. The towers were attacked, the museum closed its doors. And suddenly I realized you can never say history is over. History is always, in a strange way, interconnected. And that's what I learned. And by the way, at that moment, when I saw those images, those tragic images of the tower collapsing, I turned to everyone, including my wife, my partners, and I said, I'm moving to Lower Manhattan. I didn't know why or how, but I had that inner feeling that I want to be there, I want to do something, because it's a site that means a lot to me.
Is New York your city? Did you, even in Berlin when this happened 10 years ago, when you were there, did you feel straight away that you had to come back and even take up this project, or did that take a while? When did you first feel the instinct to get involved?
Instantly, when I saw those images. You know, I am a New Yorker, I'm an immigrant. You know, I came from Poland, I lived in the Bronx, but like all New Yorkers, I felt I could have been one of those people who were in the towers. And colleagues of mine have perished in those towers. You know, my father worked around Wall Street as a printer. My brother-in-law worked as an engineer in those buildings of the Port Authority. You know, when I was a student of architecture here in New York, I saw the towers being constructed. We went frequently to the site to see this mega construction and what it meant for New York. So, of course, I felt instantly the connection, the solidarity with New Yorkers, with Americans, I think with people around the world of goodwill, that this tragedy is a tragedy that happened to everyone in an open democratic world. And this attack, this terrorist attack, was emblematic of what we unfortunately saw after that as well.
But how quickly do you go from a tragic event happening in your hometown in New York, the place where you spent a lot of your youth, to the moment where you say, I want to be involved in this? Surely it didn't happen the day itself.
No, of course not, because the competition for Ground Zero, what to do there, was a couple of years later. Actually, 2002, 2003 was the competition. And really, it was only when I was already one of the finalists with 5 other architects, and we were standing in One Liberty Plaza overlooking the site and seeing this empty pit. And on a miserable, rainy November day, somebody said, does anybody want to go down to this site? And everybody said, no, we can see it much better from this height. And I said, I want to go down. And it is when I went down to that site, when I descended that 75-foot ramp down to the bedrock, that's when I actually realized what the site meant. It wasn't just an empty site. It was where people perished. You came close to the souls that were lost. I touched that wall, and the engineer told me that's the slaughter wall. If that wall had collapsed, all the subways would have been flooded with water. It would have been an apocalypse. And suddenly I realized everything came back to me. The Statue of Liberty, Declaration of Independence, where we stood, which was the site where George Washington and the founders of this country came to pray, St. Paul's Church, for the future of the United States. Suddenly everything came back, and I thought I will start with a memory. That is the center of the site. Those who perished, the families of those victims, that's the center of the site.
Let me ask you quickly as well, though. We heard from the US president only recently that there is a little bit of fear that something might happen on the 10th anniversary, that there might be some kind of a revenge attack for the killing of Osama bin Laden. Do you worry a little bit about this specific site here, the site that you're working on?
You know, we all worry, but our ways of life will not be determined by terrorism. You know, New York will not change because of those who wish us ill, those who don't take democracy as their value. The fundamentalists, the fanatics will not win. So yes, of course we have to take security seriously, and we have taken security very seriously in this site, but New York will not become a bunker. It's an open city, it's a free city, it's a city where people have lived with each other from various cultures, different religions, in peace and harmony, and I think that's what New York is about. That's what this site is about.
Let me ask you just finally, quickly, 10 years ago this was a smouldering mess just a few blocks away from here. Where do you see the site being in 10 years, maybe even further down the road? How do you see it looking, basically?
I think we have created, a new center in the old Lower Manhattan of New York, a new really public space with vital life. I think this place will be the most attractive. There will be an incredible memorial which will attract people to think about things, to see that day in history. And that day has changed the world. You know, we have seen political answers to these attacks, we've seen military answers, but in architecture, the answers create something, build something that reaffirms the future. And I think that's the nature of architecture. You can't do architecture without laying foundations for something truly sustainable, truly oriented towards stability and the values that we all share.
On that note, Mr. Liebeskind, thank you very much for being with us. That's Daniel Liebeskind, architect and the master planner of the new World Trade Center site. You've been watching the France 24 interview. Make sure you tune in for our coverage of the 10th anniversary of those attacks on 9/11. Please do stay tuned to France 24.